I want you to picture your morning today. Specifically, I want you to go back to that moment you walked into the kitchen, or maybe when you were standing in line at a cafe. You looked at the options. Maybe you wavered for a second between the dark roast or the latte, and then you picked one. It feels like you did that, right?
It's the most natural feeling in the world.
In that specific moment, your conscious self reached out, weighed the variables, and made a free choice.
Right, it's the feeling of agency. I mean, without it, I don't think we could get out of bed.
Exactly. But here's the question that kept me up last night after reading through this stack of research you sent over. What if that feeling is, and I'm quoting the source material here, a magnificent illusion? What if that cup of coffee was actually chosen for you seconds before you even knew you wanted it by a hidden assembly line of neurons and environmental cues?
It is a bit of a vertigo moment, isn't it? But that is exactly what we are unpacking today. We're looking at free will, but not in the way you usually hear about it.
Right.
We aren't going to spend the next 20 minutes quoting ancient philosophers in togas debating the nature of the soul.
No togas today. We're looking at the mechanics.
Precisely. We're taking a systems view. We're looking at the architecture of agency. We've got a fascinating stack of sources here. Neuroscience papers from Libet and Soon.
About brain timing, yeah.
Cognitive science on predictive processing from Carl Friston. And even regulatory reports on dark patterns from the FTC.
So the mission today is to deconstruct how we make choices. And I have to ask right off the bat, are we about to tell everyone that they're just biological robots and nothing matters?
Right.
Because that's usually where these conversations go, and I'd like to avoid the nihilism if possible.
We can definitely avoid the nihilism. We aren't here to say choices are fake. The goal of this research is to show that choices are emergent.
Emergent.
Yeah. We tend to think of a choice as a distinct moment where the conscious mind pulls a lever. The research suggests it's more like the endpoint of a very long, very complex assembly line.
An assembly line involving what?
Your biology, your history, and the design of the world around you.
Okay, let's get on that assembly line. And I think we have to start with the internal system, the stuff happening inside our skulls, because there is some data here that is, frankly, a little spooky.
You're talking about the timing studies.
I am. If you look at the classic counterargument to free will, it always comes back to this one fundamental issue: timing.
Right. When does the brain act versus when do we think we act?
Exactly.
And to understand this, we have to go back to 1983. The classic study by Benjamin Libet. This is really the grandfather of the free will is an illusion argument in modern neuroscience.
Walk us through what Libet actually did, because on paper it sounds almost too simple to be revolutionary.
It was deceptively simple. He asked participants to flex their wrist whenever they felt like it, just a spontaneous voluntary action.
Okay.
At the same time, he's measuring their brain activity with EEG. So he's looking at electrical signals. And he asked them to watch a special clock and note the exact millisecond they felt the urge to move.
So you have 3 data points: the physical movement, the conscious feeling of I decided to move, and the electrical brain activity.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. Libet found a spike in brain activity, what is technically called the readiness potential.
Readiness potential.
And it appeared hundreds of milliseconds before the subjects reported being aware of their intention to move.
So just to be clear on readiness potential, this is the brain revving the engine.
Think of it as electrical buildup in the motor cortex. It's the brain preparing to execute a command. And Libet found this buildup started about 350 milliseconds before the conscious decision occurred.
So the brain was revving the engine before the driver even decided to get in the car.
That's a great way to put it. It suggested that the conscious decision wasn't the cause of the action, but more like, I don't know, a notification that popped up after the process had already started.
But wait, it gets crazier, because 1983 was a long time ago. We have better scanners now.
Much better.
You highlighted a study from 2008 by Soon and colleagues using fMRI, which looks at blood flow, not just electricity. And they found something that makes Libet's 350 milliseconds look like a blink of an eye.
This one is the heavy hitter. They didn't just look at the motor cortex, which controls movement. They looked at the frontopolar cortex, which is involved in high-level planning.
So a different part of the brain entirely?
And they asked people to choose between pressing a left button or a right button.
And what did they find?
They found they could detect patterns predicting which button a person would press left or right up to 10 seconds before the person was consciously aware of making the choice.
10 seconds?
10 seconds.
That is an eternity in brain time. I could seemingly be sitting there thinking I'm weighing my options, left or right, latte or dark roast, but my brain settled the debate 10 seconds ago.
Potentially. It implies that what we experience as deliberation might just be us catching up to a conclusion the subconscious already reached.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this is usually where people start having an existential crisis. If my brain decides 10 seconds before I do, am I just a passenger?
Right.
Is my conscious mind just a PR guy taking credit for the brain's work?
Well, here's where we need to add some critical nuance from our source notes.
Yeah.
We have to be careful not to overclaim.
Okay.
If you look closely at the data in the Soon study, it wasn't a crystal ball.
What was the accuracy?
It was often around 60%.
So, better than a coin flip, but not by much.
Right.
Right.
It means there's a bias, a tilt, but not total predetermination. If it were 100%, we could pack up and go home. Free will is dead. But 60% suggests something else.
Yeah, and there's a newer theory.
Yes. A theory that challenges the whole readiness potential idea. It's called the accumulator model by Scherger and colleagues from 2012.
I loved this part of the reading because it makes the brain sound less like a secret commander and more like static noise.
That's closer to the truth. Scherger suggests that what Libet saw, that readiness potential, wasn't necessarily a specific decision being made in secret. It might just be stochastic fluctuations.
Stochastic fluctuations. Let's break that down.
It just means random neural noise. Think of your brain activity like the surface of the oceans, always bobbing up and down.
Okay.
Scherger argues that when you're asked to move randomly, you're essentially waiting for a wave to be high enough to cross a threshold.
So think of it like a bucket filling up with water. The neurons are firing randomly, drip, drip, splash. The water level rises and falls. Once the noise crosses a certain rim,
Bam, the movement is triggered. And because the noise has to build up to hit that rim, if you look backward in time from the action, it looks like a decision was building. But really, it's just random noise hitting a tipping point.
So it's not that my subconscious plotted against me 10 seconds ago. It's that the random background noise of my brain hit a tipping point, and my conscious mind said, hey, I meant to do that.
Yes. It challenges the idea of instant uncaused choosing. Whether it's a 10-second lead time or just neural noise building up, the takeaway is the same. Agency isn't a magical spark.
It's relocated.
It's relocated into a longer causal pipeline.
That's a great phrase, a causal pipeline. So if I'm not choosing in the moment, if I'm just the guy signing the paperwork at the end of the pipeline, what is the brain actually doing? Because it feels like I'm doing something.
It really does.
I'm not just a passive observer.
And that leads us to the second part of our deep dive, the predictive engine. This is based largely on the work of neuroscientist Carl Friston.
Predictive coding. This concept seems to be taking over cognitive science lately.
It really is. The core idea is that the brain is a Bayesian inference engine.
Okay, that's a mouthful. Bayesian inference. Let's translate that for the non-statisticians.
It's a fancy way of saying your brain is a betting machine. It deals in probabilities. It isn't passively seeing the world like a camera. It is constantly projecting a model onto the world. It predicts what's happening, and it only really pays attention when it gets something wrong.
When there's a prediction error.
Exactly.
So my brain has a model that says, I like coffee in the morning. It predicts that coffee will fix my caffeine withdrawal.
Right. A choice isn't you looking at a menu with a blank slate. It's your brain selecting the action that best satisfies its current model of the world, based on your history, your biology, your goals. It's trying to minimize surprise.
Minimizing surprise. So if I usually order a latte, ordering a tea would create a prediction error. My brain would have to work harder to justify that.
Exactly. The brain is an energy-conserving organ. It creates these models to save calories. It wants to go with the prediction that has the highest probability of being correct based on past experience.
This explains why change is so hard. To change a habit, I'm literally fighting my brain's statistical model of who I am.
You are fighting the math, yes.
But where does the feeling of free will fit in? If the brain is just running math to minimize error, why do I feel like the author of the story? Why doesn't it feel like math?
For that, we have to look at Daniel Wegner's work, specifically his book, The Illusion of Conscious Will. He describes that feeling as an authorship experience.
Authorship experience.
Think of it like a user interface on your computer.
Okay.
When you click a folder and drag it to the trash, it looks like your hand moves the file. In reality, there are millions of lines of code executing in the background that you never see.
Right. I don't see the electrons moving. I don't see the binary.
Of course not.
If I had to manually code the movement of the file every time I wanted to delete a spreadsheet, I'd never get anything done.
It would be impossible. The feeling of dragging the file is a narrative wrapper. It's a representation constructed by the system to help you keep track of what's happening.
So the will is the icon on the desktop.
Wigner argues that conscious will is the desktop icon. It's real as an experience. I really am seeing the icon move. But it hides the complex causal code running underneath.
Wow. So the will feeling is the interface. It allows us to track our own behavior without getting bogged down in the neural firing rates.
That's a perfect analogy. And because that code is hidden, we often make up stories to explain why we clicked what we clicked. This connects to Tversky and Kahneman's work on heuristics.
The fast thinking.
Yes. Our brains rely on shortcuts. We make the decision based on a heuristic like pick the middle option or pick what I recognize, and then milliseconds later, our conscious mind generates a reason.
A story.
Oh, I picked this because it has notes of hazelnut.
Post hoc justification. We are great press secretaries for our own brains. We spin the story after the decision is made.
Exactly. So, to summarize the internal system, we have a brain that predicts reality based on past models, runs on hidden code, acts before we fully realize it, and makes up stories to explain itself.
Which is mind-bending enough on its own. If we lived in a cave, maybe that would be the end of the story. But we don't live in a vacuum. We live in a world that is constantly poking and prodding that internal system. This brings us to part 3, the external system, the architecture of agency.
This is where the rubber meets the road. If our brains are inference engines, they are reacting to inputs. And in the modern world, those inputs are increasingly designed by other people.
We're talking about choice architecture.
Right. This is the concept popularized by Thaler and Sunstein, often called nudging.
Nudging.
The basic premise is that choices are never presented neutrally. The way an option is framed, the default setting, the order of the list, the color of the button, all of that changes what we choose.
The classic example is placing the vegetables at eye level in the cafeteria. You aren't forcing anyone to eat broccoli, but you're making it statistically much more likely.
Why?
Because, going back to the brain, it requires less energy to pick the thing right in front of you.
It exploits the brain's desire to minimize effort. Now, take that concept and apply it to the digital world. Our sources included some startling papers on recommender systems and digital nudging.
This is what I found most unsettling. In the cafeteria, the lunch lady doesn't know my entire history. But Amazon does, Netflix does, TikTok definitely does.
And that changes the game. Algorithms can now rank, hide, and time information to steer behavior with incredible precision. One of the papers showed how recommendation algorithms effectively narrow our exposure.
It creates a feedback loop, right?
A powerful one, yes. The system learns what your predictive engine likes. It feeds you more of that. Your brain says, low surprise, I like this. You click. The system reinforces.
And suddenly you weren't choosing what to watch.
You're just accepting the path of least resistance.
It's the quote I wrote down from the notes. A choice is often the last step in a path someone else paved.
It really is. And while nudging can be benevolent, like getting you to save for retirement, we need to talk about the flip side. We need to talk about dark patterns.
The FTC report. This stuff makes my blood boil.
The Federal Trade Commission and the OECD define these as interface designs that subvert user autonomy. They are effectively weaponizing behavioral science against the user.
Give us some concrete examples. What does a dark pattern look like in the wild?
Think about the Roach Motel technique.
The Roach Motel. You check in, but you can't check out.
That's the one. Think about the friction involved in canceling a subscription. You can sign up with one click that's high visual salience, low friction, but to cancel,
Oh, it's a nightmare.
you have to click through 4 pages, maybe find a tiny link buried in a footer, or even call a phone number during business hours.
That isn't just bad design, that's intentional.
It is designing the environment to make choosing to leave exhaustively difficult. It exploits the sunk cost fallacy and our natural aversion to effort.
Or when you get a pop-up that says sign up for our newsletter and the no button is tiny gray text that says, no, I hate saving money.
That is confirm shaming. It's manipulating your emotional response, your internal heuristic of not wanting to feel stupid, to steer the predictive engine toward the yes button.
So let's synthesize this. The systems view. You have the internal system, my brain, predicting using shortcuts, firing 10 seconds early. And it meets the external system, the menus, the algorithms, the dark patterns designed to exploit those exact shortcuts.
The illusion isn't that you didn't click the button, you did. The illusion is thinking that the click was purely unconstrained, that it was a moment of pure freedom, independent of that massive collision between biology and environment.
Which leads to the big uncomfortable question, the existential crisis of the episode. If it's all neurons and dark patterns, do we have any responsibility?
Yeah.
If I'm just a predictable outcome of a system, can you blame me for anything? Can I take credit for anything?
This is the crucial pivot. And the source material argues that we need to reframe agency entirely. We need to stop looking for freedom in the microsecond of the choice.
So how do we do that?
Determinism doesn't erase responsibility. It changes how we manage it. We move from metaphysical blame to system governance.
System governance. Break that down for me.
If you accept that your choices are outputs of a system, then the way to change the choices isn't to just will harder in the moment. By the time you are in the moment, the predictive engine is already running.
So it's too late.
In a way, yeah. The way to change the choice is to change the inputs.
So responsibility isn't about magical willpower. It's about training and environment design.
It's about second-order volition. That's a philosophical term for wanting to want. You might want the donut in the moment. That's your first-order desire. But you want to be healthy. That's your second-order desire.
And since I know my first-order brain is going to grab the donut if it's there because it's lazy and likes sugar, my second-order responsibility is to not buy the donuts in the first place.
Precisely. If you know your brain has a latency and relies on heuristics, you can responsibly design your environment to protect yourself. You can put the alarm clock across the room.
You can install the ad blocker. You can turn off autoplay.
You're governing the machine.
You're acting as the architect of your own life.
Yes, and on a societal level, it shifts us from just blaming individuals for bad choices to looking at the choice architecture. If an interface is designed to trap people, like gambling apps or addictive algorithms, we don't just blame the user, we regulate the design.
It reminds me of the concept of compatibilism mentioned in the notes. The idea that freedom is the ability to act according to your motivations, even if those motivations are determined.
Right. You are free if you can do what you want. The fact that what you want is shaped by biology and culture doesn't make it less yours. It just makes it understandable.
And manageable.
It makes it something we can analyze and improve.
So we aren't puppets, but we are pilots of a very complex autopilot-heavy plane.
And we are flying through weather patterns designed by other people.
That is a terrifying and helpful image.
It's empowering, actually, because once you see the strings, the neural strings and the digital strings, you can start to pull back. You stop beating yourself up for a lapse in willpower and start asking, how is the environment set up to make me fail?
So what does this all mean for the listener right now? We've gone from the 10-second gap in the brain to the dark patterns on our screens.
It means that free will isn't a spark you have or don't have. It's a process. And it's a process you can influence, but only if you stop treating it like magic and start treating it like a system.
Stop trying to control the output in the split second and start controlling the inputs in the hours before.
Exactly. Change the inputs, change the predictions, change the choice.
Well, this has certainly changed how I'm going to look at the coffee menu tomorrow morning. I'm going to be wondering if I really want the latte or if the layout of the menu just made it the path of least resistance.
Just don't think about it for too long or the queue will get angry.
Fair point. Before we go, what is the one thing you want to leave our listener with? A final thought to chew on.
I'd say this. If your choices are the output of a system part biology part environment, then the most powerful choice you can make isn't about what to choose in the moment, but how to design the system that chooses for you. The question isn't, did I choose this? The question is, who is designing your environment? Because if you aren't, someone else is.
Who is designing your environment? I think I'm going to be thinking about that all week. That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.